Kant's critique of judgment, aesthetics and teleology. Kant's critique of the power of judgment addresses aesthetics and teleology, exploring how we judge beauty and nature. It bridges theoretical and practical reason by examining how aesthetic judgments fit into his philosophical framework. Kant's theory of aesthetic judgment, outlined in the Critique of Judgment, connects nature, governed by scientific laws, and freedom, governed by moral laws. Aesthetic judgment involves subjective experiences of beauty that possess universal communicability. Aesthetic pleasure arises independently of personal gain or practical interests. This disinterestedness distinguishes aesthetic judgments from utility and morality. Example: admiring a painting's aesthetic qualities without wanting to own it exemplifies disinterestedness. Aesthetic judgments, though subjective, imply universal agreement. Kant posits that shared cognitive faculties allow for the communication of aesthetic experiences. Quote, "The beautiful is that which, apart from a concept, pleases universally," Kant, 1790. Example: listening to a symphony, one might feel that its beauty should be universally acknowledged. Aesthetic experiences arise from the interaction of imagination and understanding without conceptual constraints, leading to enjoyment. Example: watching a sunset involves imaginative engagement with colors and shapes, rather than scientific classification. The sublime evokes awe from vastness or complexity, contrasting beauty's harmony with feelings of tension and liberation through reason. Mathematical sublime, experiences of incomprehensible vastness, for example, the night sky. Dynamical sublime, overwhelming power that poses no threat, for example, thunderstorms. Example: observing the Grand Canyon can evoke feelings of the sublime. Kant's aesthetic judgment has lasting significance in various contemporary contexts. 1. Art appreciation and criticism. Critics emphasize intrinsic artistic value over personal interests, aligning with Kant's focus on formal qualities. 2. Environmental aesthetics. Experiences of nature's sublimity reflect Kant's ideas, as people describe feelings of awe in natural settings. 3. Cross-cultural aesthetic appreciation. Aesthetic experiences, while subjective, can be shared across cultures, demonstrating Kant's subjective universality. 4. Everyday aesthetics. Disinterested aesthetic judgments apply to ordinary objects and designs, reinforcing that beauty enriches everyday life. Kant's theory faces several critiques. 1. The role of emotions. Critics argue Kant undervalues emotions in aesthetic experiences. Hume suggests that taste is shaped by personal feelings rather than cognitive processes. Example: individual responses to art vary widely, challenging the universality of aesthetic judgments. 2. Feminist critique. Feminist theorists like Caroline Korsmeyer criticize Kant's focus on disinterestedness for marginalizing traditionally feminine art forms and reinforcing gender biases. 3. Postmodern critique. Postmodern philosophers, such as Lyotard, argue that aesthetic judgments are culturally specific, undermining Kant's claim of universal validity. Example: cultural differences in appreciating art challenge the idea of universal aesthetic standards. 4. Existentialist critique. Nietzsche rejects universal aesthetic values, asserting that aesthetic judgment is individualistic, and tied to personal freedom rather than governed by rigid rules. Kant's theory of aesthetic judgment emphasizes disinterested pleasure, subjective universality, and the free play of cognitive faculties, significantly shaping discussions in art criticism and aesthetics. While his ideas face criticism for overlooking emotional and cultural factors, they remain foundational in the study of beauty, art, and human experience. Immanuel Kant's theory of teleological judgment is crucial in his Critique of Judgment, 1790, particularly in the section on teleology. Teleological judgment relates to understanding objects and events in nature in terms of purpose, telos. It bridges natural science, which explains phenomena through laws of cause and effect, with human moral understanding, which interprets them through goals. Kant argues that while nature does not possess inherent purpose, human reason tends to view certain natural phenomena as purposefully designed. Kant distinguishes between mechanistic judgment, which explains nature through physical laws, and teleological judgment, which considers nature in terms of purpose. Unlike earlier philosophies that emphasized teleology metaphysically, Kant applies it to human comprehension of nature. Kant asserts that certain natural phenomena function as purposive wholes. Parts exist for the whole and because of the whole, as seen in biological organisms. Quote, "An organized being is then not a mere machine, it possesses formative power," Kant, 1790. Example, a tree's roots, trunk, branches, and leaves work together to sustain the whole organism, with each part serving a vital function. Kant distinguishes between determinate judgment, applying general laws, and reflective judgment, searching for universal principles. Teleological judgment serves as a heuristic, encouraging us to interpret natural phenomena as purpose-driven, aiding scientific exploration, particularly in biology. Example, studying the human eye involves reflecting on how its parts serve the purpose of vision, even without claiming intentional design. Kant argues that living organisms are best understood through teleology. Unlike inanimate objects, they display internal purposiveness that mechanistic explanations cannot fully account for. He does not claim organisms have specific purposes assigned by an external designer, but rather that they exhibit self-organization. Kant links teleology to morality, asserting that humans are ends in themselves and should never be treated merely as means to an end, as expressed in his categorical imperative. He views human history as a teleological progression toward rational and moral development. Example, although chaotic, human history can be interpreted as a movement toward moral progress and enlightenment. 1. Biology and medicine. Kant's teleological judgment influences how scientists and doctors view the body. They often analyze body parts in terms of their contributions to the whole system. Example, medical professionals consider how the heart pumps blood to sustain life. 2. Environmental ethics. Kant's teleological ideas promote a holistic view of nature. Recognizing the interconnectedness of ecosystems encourages the preservation of biodiversity, and the maintenance of ecological balance. Example, deforestation disrupts the purposes of various organisms and the ecosystem's balance. 3. Philosophy of science. Teleological judgment remains relevant in scientific philosophy, particularly regarding the limits of mechanistic explanations. Kant's view that teleology aids understanding of biological systems resonates with discussions about evolution and purposive adaptations. Example, evolutionary biology often uses purposive language to describe traits, like feathers for flight. 4. Human purpose and ethics. Kant's moral teleology, that humans should be treated as ends, underpins modern human rights discourse. This view emphasizes the intrinsic worth of individuals and the promotion of human dignity. Example, social equality and human dignity movements can be framed as part of a broader teleological vision of moral progress. Kant's teleological judgment has faced various criticisms, particularly from philosophers questioning the utility and accuracy of teleological reasoning in understanding nature. 1. Scientific critique, Darwinism and mechanism. One of the most significant challenges came from Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's explanation of natural selection provides a mechanistic account of how organisms adapt without requiring teleological assumptions. Evolution is driven by random mutations and survival pressures, rendering teleological explanations unnecessary and potentially misleading. Example, the idea that a giraffe's long neck evolved for the purpose of reaching high leaves is often criticized as an oversimplification. The trait simply conferred a survival advantage. 2. Reductionism in science. Critics like Daniel Dennett argue that teleological explanations introduce unnecessary complexity. Dennett contends that reductionist approaches, which break down phenomena into their simplest mechanical parts, are preferable and sufficient for understanding the natural world without invoking purposes or goals. 3. Hegelian critique, incomplete teleology. G.W.F. Hegel criticized Kant's teleology as incomplete. He argued that Kant failed to integrate teleology into his system of reason and reality. For Hegel, purpose is not merely a heuristic but an inherent aspect of nature's and human history's development. Teleology, in Hegel's view, unfolds as an objective reality in the world itself. 4. Nietzsche's critique of purpose. Friedrich Nietzsche offered a more radical critique, rejecting the very idea of purpose in both nature and human life. He viewed teleological thinking as a metaphysical attempt to impose meaning on a chaotic, purposeless universe. Nietzsche concluded that humans must create their own values instead of seeking a preordained purpose. Example: Nietzsche would argue against Kant's notion of a teleological direction in human history, suggesting that the will to power drives actions, with no inherent meaning in nature or existence. Kant's theory of teleological judgment provides a framework for understanding nature through purpose and interconnectedness. While he does not assert that nature possesses inherent goals, his concept of reflective judgment allows humans to think of nature as purposive, which is valuable in biology, environmental ethics, and philosophy of science. Nonetheless, Kant's ideas have faced substantial criticism from evolutionary biology and reductionist approaches that advocate for mechanistic explanations devoid of purpose. Despite these critiques, Kant's teleology remains influential in discussions about the relationship between reason, nature, and human purpose. Thank you for exploring Kant's criticisms with us. We hope this overview encourages further exploration of his writings. Ring the bell for further notifications on new uploads.